This evening it's a good chance for me to talk to you a bit about the Buddha's teachings. All of these teachings are for our benefit and to aid us in improving, adjusting and developing ourselves, helping us to live in society in a good way. And they can be applied to all societies, different cultures and different characters of people living in those different societies. They're universally applicable. People's culture, the culture they live in, and then particularly their particular character, will ultimately be formed and depend on their attachments, upadana. Today I want to talk about the method of practice that the Buddha gave us as a way to liberate ourselves, free ourselves from these things. He gave us these teachings to remind us and guide us, show us the way to live and practice in society, in the world, for liberation. Normally we live in society, in the world, we're making a living, just following the normal way of the world, making a living, following the normal ways of society of the world. But the Buddha said that is still very limited and full of all kinds of danger, because we are not yet free from the kilesas or attachments and the causes of suffering. And unless we use the Dhamma to free ourselves from these things, then we will tend towards two extremes in our lives. The extreme of Kamasukhalikanu yoga, or a sensual indulgence, or Attakilamatanu yoga, self-torture or attachment to ways that bring harm to ourselves. In the world now, most of us have a very complete lifestyle, complete experience on the material level. And we say the loka dhammas, or the worldly dhammas that we experience every day, are tending to display that, the material gain and material kinds of happiness, sensual happiness we can experience. But the way of the worldly dhammas, or loka dhammas, is not the way of enlightened or noble ones, aryas. It's the way of unenlightened beings, and it's the way for suffering. What the worldly dhammas, loka dhammas, bring to us are mind objects, what we call dhamma aramanas, the experience of our mind that are of two levels, two kinds. They bring us what we call itaramana, those pleasant, acceptable experiences that we lead to liking, we like them, but also anitaramana, unpleasant experiences, unacceptable experiences that we don't like. Say, for instance, when we experience the loka dhamma, or the worldly dhamma of gain, we gain things, we get things. Generally, unenlightened beings, this makes them feel good, feel happy, and we get attached to that feeling, good, happy feeling. But this is already setting up the conditions for suffering, because it's a natural law, you could say, that when there's gain, sooner or later it must be followed by loss. When we get things, those things, we lose them, or they break, or they're removed from us somehow, they disappear. Kamasukhalikanu yoga, or sensual indulgence, in that gaining of things, and having of things, and experiencing of things, this is something we experience in the mind itself. We attach to that loka dhamma, that particular worldly experience of gain, getting things, having things. And that, when there is no mindfulness and wisdom, that leads to delusion. And the presence of delusion in the mind leads on to the arising of more unwholesome mind states. In particular, we get deluded and caught into a sense of satisfaction, a false sense of satisfaction based on gain, having things, getting things. And that delusion is intoxicating in nature. It makes us a bit drunk, or we lose our way because of that. And so we attach to the material world. Similarly with the experience, say, of good health, another loka dhamma, the sense of well-being, strength and so on that we get with good health. When we don't have clear understanding of the Dhamma, this will also intoxicate us. We'll enjoy it, we'll attach to it. And generally when we have it, we fail to see the future that is inevitable, that good health will change. It will turn into old age, degeneration, weaker health or illness. And even when we are enjoying good health and are attached to it, we even tend to look down on other people who are already experiencing old age or degeneration through delusion. So the Buddha said, know how to observe and contemplate these things. Know the truth of reality, of nature, of all this. Know what it is that leads us to intoxication, what causes it. The Buddha taught us how to avoid being overwhelmed by these worldly dhammas, the loka dhammas, and controlled by them. And he taught us how to protect our minds from that effect. And he said that all beings that are careful, circumspect and watch over their minds will be able to free themselves from Mara's trap, meaning the worldly dhammas, the trap of the worldly dhammas. So our practice is becoming aware of this and becoming aware of the role of loka dhamma, worldly dhammas, worldly attachment in creating delusion. And our practice is to help us to avoid this, abandon it, not let it happen, not let the worldly dhammas cover over the truth and fool us. So we must learn how to relate to the worldly dhammas, which are our experience, everyday experience in life, with mindfulness and wisdom. The Buddha said, don't let yourself fall into these states of attraction or aversion, because these are inferior states of mind. When you look at them from a higher plane or through wisdom, you'll see they're actually inferior, they're blemished, they're lacking. So to avoid that, avoid falling into states of attraction and aversion, we need a method. And that method is to learn to use mindfulness, to focus on our experience and then contemplate it, to see the true nature of our experience. We need a method, we need skillful means to do this. And this is what practice is, Dhamma practice is developing the skillful means to lead us away from all doubt and uncertainty about these things, or over concern and worry about these things, or what we say, to lead us away from the 5 hindrances, those different 5 qualities of mind which block us from seeing the Dhamma. To do that, we have to develop a mind state, or what we call an aramana, that is above and free from the loka dhammas, the worldly dhammas. And this aramana or mind state must be peaceful and one-pointed. It's what we call the ekakata citta, the mind of one-pointedness, where there is present moment awareness. We're aware of what's happening, fully aware of all the objects that the mind is experiencing from moment to moment. With this one-pointed awareness, this is what allows our mind to be free from suffering, or enables it to be free from suffering. And it allows the mind, or enables the mind, to not follow the way of the ordinary unenlightened person who doesn't yet see the Dhamma. It enables us to make use of our experience to develop wisdom and understanding from these worldly Dhammas that we experience. It frees us from danger and allows us to develop clear understanding, and from that we will know what our duty is as a practitioner and how to make use of all our experience of this world, the Loka Dhammas, every day, every night, at all times, how to really use them for developing wisdom. The Buddha said, be mindful and contemplate, so that all these things become clear. When there is sati, and mindfulness, and we are contemplating, we will clearly see what we call the three characteristics of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta, the impermanent, unsatisfactory nature of these things, the lack of self in these things. And this is what gradually leads to a relaxation of our attachment. And where we normally give importance to things, give over importance to things in our perception, the way we look, which feeds attachment, then that will start to change. Our wrong views will start to change. Our attachments to this very sense of self or conceit will start to be reduced, diminish, and peace will come in its place. We practice the Buddha Dhamma for peace and for letting go and abandoning of certain things. We're letting go of views, the attachment to views, wrong views. We're letting go of the very conceit of self, which is an attachment. And when we have what we call dhamma vichaya, we have mindfulness and then wise reflection based on the presence of mindfulness, we're able to let go of all this attachment to attraction and aversion, or these dhamma-ramanas, mind objects. We can see attraction as just attraction, aversion as just aversion, as functions of the mind. We can see them clearly the way they are. And this leads to chaka dhamma, a sense of giving up, renouncing things, letting things go. This arises in place of that attraction and aversion. And so in experiencing Loka Dhammas, worldly Dhammas, the mind goes straight to letting go. And when we have this letting go, then the Dhamma-ramanas, the experiences of the mind, this attraction and aversion, they can't overwhelm us anymore. We don't just follow automatically these objects of mind, these moods and mind states that arise. We see them as Loka Dhamma, we see them for what they are, just worldly Dhamma, and we know them as such. And by knowing them as such, we see their limitations, the fact that they restrict us, bind us to the world, they're not letting us be free or independent. And so through the practice, with mindfulness, we develop right view, correct view. It gives us freedom. This understanding gives us freedom, and that freedom is expressed in the way we live. We learn how to live in the world wisely, in a correct way, live in society. And we learn how to live correctly in line with Dhamma on both the inside and the outside, on the level of ajatta and bahita, meaning whether we're relating to the world outside, other people, society, or whether the way we're relating to our own internal world, the mind states and objects of mind that arise. We use the Dhamma, the wisdom that we have gained, to deal in a correct way with all of this experience. In effect, we have a Buddha, or the quality of the Buddha, inside us. it comes through this practice of contemplation, circumspection, and wisdom that comes through the reflection, wise reflection. And we know how to relate in the proper way. We become what we call Kalyanachana, meaning one who is practicing the Dhamma, one who is, we could say, a good person, a good friend. Good person is somebody who's practicing this Dhamma in this way. One shouldn't confuse that yet with Aryachana, which is somebody who's actually a noble one, who's actually realized the Dhamma. But practicing in this way as a Kalyanachana, we know which Dhammas are appropriate to develop and which should be abandoned. We know which Dhamma, which mind states, which objects of mind that it's appropriate to, we say, visit or entertain in our minds, and those which are not appropriate to entertain in our minds. We know that the worldly Dhamma that leads to suffering is not appropriate, and so we won't follow it. We will separate our minds from it and let go of it. So the Loka Dhammas, the worldly Dhammas, are things that we must come to understand, because it is involving our daily lives, how we live in the world, in society. In society we have what we call Samuti Satcha and Vimutti Satcha. Samuti Satcha, a conventional reality; Vimutti Satcha, ultimate reality, or the reality of liberation. When we're born into this world with these five khandhas, then the ones who look after us from birth, they will generally give us a name. And this name is convention. It's part of conventional reality. And we can use it for living in the world, relating to other people, and for our convenience. But we have to know that this is just a conventional reality. These five khandhas have this name, but it's no more than that. It's just a convention or an appearance. Praise and blame, another worldly Dhamma, Loka Dhamma, and these also are stemming from conventional reality, Samuti Satcha. But generally when we experience praise and blame, it will connect with us, it will leave an imprint and give rise to different Dhamma aramanas, different mind states will come up. If there's no attachment left in the mind, then when that person experiences praise or blame, nothing will happen. It's just the arising and passing away of Rupa Dhamma, sound, and that person will give no particular importance to it in their mind. If we are practicing with this, we might say that one might describe this, that there's just the parikama, or the repetition of the truth. Rupang anicang, form is impermanent, or rupang anatta, form is not self. This is an explanation of what's going on in the mind of somebody who's not attached. It's just rupang anicang or rupang anatta as we chant in the morning chanting. But in our practice we can use that as a skillful way to reflect, to deal with the objects of the world. Say, for instance, praise and blame. One could just recite silently to oneself, rupang anicang, when hearing praise, hearing blame. When we practice like this, then this is knowing how to live in the world correctly, skillfully. Or when our material things break, we have possessions, property and stuff. When these break down, or they fall apart, or just get so old and weak, or they just collapse. For one who's reflecting in this way, who knows how to reflect, then they'll just say, oh, it means I don't have to look after that thing anymore. That's the kind of attitude that would be there when they're reflecting on rupang anicang, rupang anatta. This is a way of reflecting to bring our minds in line with the Dhamma and to keep us peaceful. If you can do that without getting suffering, without worrying when something breaks down, then your mind will be peaceful. And we say that one who can do that, they have a natural immunity to suffering. Their immune system, mental immune system, is working well. They won't suffer. They won't attach to gain or loss. There's nothing actually to gain, nothing to loss. When you have this perception, this understanding deep in your mind, rupang anicang, say, form is impermanent, then you can see there's nothing gained, nothing lost, even though we have these worldly experiences. So, with sati, mindfulness, and panya, wisdom, this is what keeps the mind free from all biases, the biases which colour the mind and cause us suffering. These are what we call akati dhamma. There's chandakati, which is like the bias of desire, craving. Dosakati is the bias of aversion. Mohakati, the bias of delusion. And bayakati is the bias of fear. And these four biases will cause us suffering. They colour the mind, they affect the mind, agitate the mind, and actually enslave the mind, bind the mind to the world. When they're there, they bind the mind in deluded ways to the world. But one who practices and develops mindfulness and wisdom, they know how to reflect on conventional reality and see it for what it is. And they can use it to develop wisdom and understanding. They can use it just for what it's meant for living in the world conveniently and easily. We have the conventions of, say, names and labels for things, but the wise one does not let that delude them. So the Buddha said that we must have and develop samma patipata, right practice, which means to live in the world with full awareness, full wisdom, to live in a way without giving rise to any form of harm or danger to ourselves or others. You could also say it means to live with a mind that is wholesome, kusala, skillful. And one who has a skillful mind or kusala mind states, wholesome mind states, they're naturally avoiding doing things which are dangerous or harmful to them. So they naturally will be living peacefully, with happiness, without worry, without regret, without suffering. The practitioner who is doing this, they see the world as empty. And the Buddha said one who is avoiding all forms of harm, danger, they see the world as empty. When he gave a talk, teaching to Venerable Mogaraja, this Venerable Mogaraja thought, he was smarter than anybody else, he was very conceited, but the Buddha gave him a reflection and said, just take this reflection and try reflecting to see that the world is empty. There's nothing there, there's nothing to attach to. There's nothing that's enduring, lasting, unchanging, other than the Dhamma itself. Only what we call sapawa Dhamma, the natural way of things, the natural way of reality, that's the only enduring thing. Everything else is unenduring, it just changes. When we can see this, the mind becomes peaceful, cool and content. So we must develop this understanding through our practice. We understand the world and the objects of the world, or nama dhammas, mental dhammas, and rupa dhammas, physical, material dhammas. And if we can do this, then we become one who is fully awake, they say. That means fully perfected, fully or complete in the practice. The thing that one becomes awake from is delusion. We wake up from delusion. And one who's fully awakened out of delusion, then they know exactly what their duty is. They know completely or fully what their duty is. And they won't do anything that is harmful or dangerous to themselves or others. and that person will know the world, understand the world completely. There's a saying in Thai, they say, the lotus is not rotten, the water is not murky. We use this saying that referring to the mind of the practitioner who's understood the world completely. They don't let their mind become negative, defiled, soiled, or unwholesome. And they see the world with wisdom and mindfulness, so the way they view the world is always in a clear, positive way. That means even from fortunate experiences, negative experiences, they can still learn from them. They can still see the Dhamma in them. Say, for instance, somebody insults them. Instead of getting caught into the suffering that might arise from attaching to that, they can see the suffering of the mind of the one who is insulting them. They can see the suffering that has caused that person to speak in that way. They can see, this is coming from their attachment, and so naturally, when understanding that, then the mind wouldn't turn to anger; it turns to metta, kindness, and karuna, compassion. Because there's a clear scene, this person is deluded, that's why they're talking like that. They're still travelling the wrong way, as it were. They're travelling in a way that's going to cause them suffering. And so, for the practitioner with mindfulness and wisdom in this way, they will naturally have a wish to help that person if it's possible. In society, that's the natural way that as we develop spiritually, then we naturally want to help others. We see the others suffering. Already this happens all over the place. It's nothing unusual. I remember when I was in Perth a few years ago, on the weekend, there was a group of healthy people who were taking some disabled people out, people in wheelchairs and physically handicapped people out for a trip. They were making use of their health, their strength, to help some people who were weaker and more disadvantaged to them. And this is metta, this is karuna. It's the sort of thing that comes the more refined our minds become. But it has to be metta with correct view, that is metta or kindness that doesn't harm the one practicing it. It should be practiced in the right amount, the proper way, not leading to the harming oneself or others. So the practitioner who knows the world, understands the world, then naturally it gives rise to certain qualities in the mind, just as we chant in the Dhammacakka Sutta. Jnanang udapadi, vicca udapadi, panya udapadi, aloka udapadi. The one who has practiced seeing the true nature of the world, the arising, passing away of all conditioned things, then they gives rise to insight, knowledge, wisdom, and the lightness, the brightness of that. These are the Buddha's teachings, and we can say this is pariyatti, or just the scriptures, but we need to discuss it and talk about the teachings in this way, because it gives us different ways of looking at truth, different angles, different perspectives that we can take away, and that can aid our practice, help us to look at things from different ways so that we can get more wisdom and put it into practice in our daily lives. It's not the only answer when we discuss the teachings like this or read them. That doesn't give us the only one final answer, but it helps us to give us right view and a way to look at the truth so that we can practice, and this will bring us to happiness and peace.